On the morning of September 11th, 2001, four commercial airplanes were hijacked. Three of them hit their designated targets, but one did not. United Airlines Flight 93 was a regular domestic passenger flight from New Jersey to California that was carried on by a Boeing 757-200 with the registration number N591UA. Of the four airplanes that were hijacked during the attacks, United 93 was different for two reasons. Number one, Flight 93 was the only one of the four hijacked planes whose destination was San Francisco, while the other three had their destination route towards Los Angeles International Airport. And number two, the Boeing 757 of Flight 93 had the biggest passenger capacity of the group of four planes, but it also had the least amount of passengers on the day of the attacks. According to the seat map, the aircraft involved in the hijacking had a capacity for 182 passengers, but on the morning of September 11th, 2001, it only had 37 passengers and 7 crew members. And of course, among those aboard the flight were 4 Al-Qaeda terrorists who boarded the plane as passengers and sat in the first-class cabin between rows 1 and 6. Another important fact of Flight 93 was his late departure time, because even though it backed away from the terminal on time, the traffic at the airport forced the plane to wait in line at the runway. And finally, at 8:42 a.m., the plane took off from Newark Liberty International Airport after a 42-minute delay, without knowing that none of the passengers aboard would be able to reach their intended destination. Just 4 minutes after the plane took off, the nightmare began, when American Airlines Flight 11 crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center at 8:46 a.m. While the plane was on his way towards San Francisco International Airport, the pilots received a message at 9:19 a.m., just 16 minutes after United Airlines Flight 175 crashed into the South Tower. The message was to alert the pilots of any cockpit intrusion, notifying them about the 2 aircrafts that crashed into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center. And just 9 minutes later, at 9:28, the hijacking began. The hijackers forced the passengers into the back of the plane while making their way into the cockpit. But unlike the other planes, the crew of Flight 93 was able to send a Mayday call, which was made by First Officer Leroy Homer Jr. during the struggle with the hijackers in the cockpit. 3 minutes after the hijacking, Ziad Jarrah, the leader of the group, made an announcement. And just 8 minutes later, at 9:39, he made a second announcement. His intention was to make the announcements to the passengers, but he made a mistake by pressing the wrong button, sending his message to the air traffic controllers, which gave him the alert that Flight 93 was hijacked. Around the same time, the passengers and crew began making phone calls to their families using the plane's GTE earphones and their personal mobile phones. A total of 37 phone calls were made by 13 passengers and crew members, which helped them to obtain the necessary information to learn about the attacks on the Twin Towers and the Pentagon. And with all that information, the passengers were able to deduce that their plane was involved in a suicide mission and not an ordinary hijacking. And after gathering in order to make a plan, they decided to fight back against the hijackers. When they saw that the plane was already flying over a rural area, they all began to take their places in the back of the plane. And it all started with the last words of passenger Todd Beamer. Are you guys ready? Okay, let's roll. And at 9:57, it happened. The passengers got up from their seats and began their assault, reducing the hijackers one by one while trying to reach the cockpit. It's incredible how the passengers were fighting in order to open the cockpit door. But most of all, it's amazing how they were able to enter the cockpit and struggle with the remaining hijackers in order to regain control of the plane. And because of that struggle, the aircraft ended up crashing in an open field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania, killing everyone on board, including the four hijackers. But thanks to the brave actions of the passengers and crew of Flight 93, the hijackers couldn't reach their target, which was crashing the plane into the capital of the United States. So even though it cost them their lives, the passengers and crew of United Airlines Flight 93 helped to prevent a greater tragedy and saved hundreds of lives in the capital. So that's why they should always be remembered as the 40 heroes of Flight 93.